Former Texas Governor, former U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. So,
good to be with you, Jack. Thank you.
Thank you. Why is it important that you are joining the Texas Sports Betting Alliance as a spokesperson to push for legalizing mobile sports betting in Texas?
Jack, the people of the state of Texas have been betting on sporting events. I'm pretty sure all of my adult life, and probably longer than that. And a game of skill, if you will, people who think they know how the game is going to come out, how it's going to turn out. And as a kind of a human nature thing, they're kind of like, hey, I bet you my team can beat your team. And it's been illegal in the state of Texas for that period of time as well. This actually started changing when the Supreme Court ruled that the prohibition nationally was not constitutional. And they basically said that this is an issue that needs to be decided by the states and by the citizens of those states, if you will, in the state of Texas, the way we do things like that. And it made abundant good sense to me that an activity which is illegal because of a the federal government has said, you know, it's illegal, and the state of Texas had said that it was illegal, but it's going on, and it's going to go on whether or not this passes or not. But I think it makes good sense for the citizens of the state to know that if they're going to decide themselves personally, they're going to place a bet that it's safe, that their information is protected. And that's what this really is about. It's going to happen. There's no doubt about that, that we're going to have people betting on sporting events in the state of Texas. And you know what? I think that's okay. But it needs to be regulated. There needs to be oversight. There are some unscrupulous outlets out there. You may place a bet and they may be offshore of the United States, and you don't get your winnings, and there's no recourse. And even worse, I think, is your private information. They may be using that private information in ways that's not appropriate, and certainly that you wouldn't give them the freedom to do. This will take care of all of that. The state of Texas will regulate, they'll oversee, and they'll protect the citizens of the state. So with that history and with that background and with that understanding about sports betting, mobile sports betting, and this isn't an expansion of gambling, Jack. I think that's the real issue for me. I never was a supporter of expanded gambling when I was a House member, when I was the governor even. And this is not an expansion. This is a regulation of an activity that's going on, that's going to go on. And at the end of the day, my argument to anyone who would ask me is, if the people of the state of Texas, if the citizens who go vote for you as a state House member, a state senator, a statewide elected official, if they're wise enough to count, or I should say, to place their faith in you with a vote for you, I think we should trust them to make the decision about this issue with a constitutional amendment, because that's how this is going to go forward. The House will vote with a 2/3 majority. The Senate will vote with a 2/3 majority. Then it goes to the people in November for their vote. To me, that's the classic 10th Amendment beauty of the country that we live in, and certainly the freedoms that the people of Texas have fought for through the years. So I think a thoughtful way to do it, I think an appropriate way to do it. And I'm pretty comfortable that, given the opportunity, the people of the state of Texas will say, you know what, we think we ought to be able to do this, and thank you for regulating it and making it safe.
So let the people decide.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the simplistic answer here, is that this is an activity that is going to happen. It's going on. We're not going to slow it down or stop it because 35 other states have chosen to allow this to happen. Texas, I think, needs to be one so that we can not only regulate and make sure that it's safe for our citizens to engage in, but the state of Texas, when this is mature, Jack, the estimates are that the state will bring into its general revenue fund about $500 million every biennium. Those are dollars that can be used to, keep a tax increase from occurring, build an infrastructure, the things that a growing state are going to need some dollars for. So it makes a lot of sense to me in a number of ways. And when you backstop it with the fact that this is not an expansion of gambling, then I think a lot of folks who may not be for gambling look at it and say, you know what, this makes sense. It's going to happen. Let's make sure it's safe and thoughtful. And the state makes a little money to boot.
I wanted to ask you, as far as the regulation is concerned, I was doing some research, and one state that legalized this in 2019 is the state of Colorado. And there was a recent audit that found that they've had some issues there as far as, not being able to ensure that the information that they're getting from these sports betting firms is accurate. In other words, the revenue estimates are accurate. And of a loophole, I guess, that was included in this law that allowed some revenue not to be collected. So what would your message be to the state if, voters ultimately approve this?
Well, my recommendation is be smart. Be smart about how you draw the legislation. And we've done this before. It's my understanding that the intent of the legislation is for this regulation to be in the Lottery Commission. They've been doing that for approaching 30 years now. They know what they're doing. They know how to track dollars, and they know how to oversee this. I think the legislation will be drawn in a way that is clear, that there won't be any loopholes. And frankly, if there was to be one, I think very quickly you can come back and fix that in the next legislative session. But I don't expect there to be loopholes in the legislation. We expect them to be spot on the first time. But again, one of the reasons that the legislature comes back and meets on a regular basis is because things need to be changed. So I don't worry about that. Colorado may not have gotten it right first, but they're kind of like California. They don't always get things right first time or second time, or in some cases, the third time.
So let me ask you, in your role as a spokesman, are you going to be going out and contacting legislative leaders, lawmakers? Some people say if the lieutenant governor isn't on board, it's not going to go anywhere. Is that part of your plan?
That's not my role. They'll have a team. When I say they, the alliance will have a team of lobbyists put together to do those types of duties. I clearly am not in that role. I'm a spokesperson for the effort. I'll be the face of the effort, if you will. Radio, TV, and may write some editorials and what have you. If somebody wants to call me and ask me, what do you think? Then, I'll be more than happy to share with that, but that's not my role. I'm really intrigued with the concept of, as you know, I didn't vote for, was not a supporter of expanded gambling when I was the governor. What I can't argue with is if the voters are wise enough to have chosen me as their, in my case, governor 3 times, I'm not going to argue and say, oh, but I'm not going to give you the opportunity to decide whether or not you think this should happen in the state of Texas. And I think the statewide elected officials in the House and the Senate both, there will be a super majority, 2/3 of those houses that agree that giving the people the right to decide this, the citizens of our state who go and vote, if we trust them to elect us, we should trust them to decide this issue.
I wanted to also ask you just some political questions based on what we just saw really within the last couple of weeks. As you know, this week, former President Donald Trump entered the 2024 presidential race, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that, because, I was at a watch party the other night where people, really still back the former president right automatically, right away, while others who supported him in 2016 and 2020 say, hold on, let's see who else is going to join
Yeah.
the field.
Well, and I would never, again, this people are going to go through this process of deciding who they want to support for the presidency of the United States. It's still a good 18 months to 2 years before this is going to get to be really hot and heavy, I would suggest. But every election cycle, and I ran statewide in Texas 6 times. I had a record. I wanted people to go look at that record and judge me on what I had done. But I also wanted them to look and see, what am I going to do? And that's why we have campaigns. We go forward, we lay out our agenda, we lay out our vision for the state of Texas. We don't just ask people to be blindly loyal to us without sitting down, thinking about where are we going to take this country. It's why we have contests. It's why we have football games. We compete. And I think that is a wise thing. I think it's a thoughtful thing. And so, we're going to go through this process. Former President Trump has announced his intention to run again. There are other people who are being talked about as potential presidential candidates as well. And it's a good, healthy process. So I hope we will respectfully and civilly go through this process of selecting who our nominees are, and the country will be better, and democracy will again show that it can be sloppy and it can be kind of rough and tumble at times, but it works. And just like asking the citizens, do you think mobile sports betting is the right thing for the state? Having an election about who needs to lead this country is a good, thoughtful process as well. Let the citizens speak.
What did you make of Texas Republicans sweeping statewide offices yet again?
I think your policies are what people vote on. One of the things that I've been intrigued with watching through the years is the Hispanic voter become comfortable voting as a Republican, kind of like I did when I was a Democrat. Jack, you'll remember I was elected 3 times to the state house as a Democrat, and then Ronald Reagan and Ronald Reagan's policies made it okay for me to become a Republican. I think the same thing is happening in the Hispanic population in the state of Texas as we made our public schools more accountable. We didn't overtax, we didn't overregulate, we didn't over-litigate. And those 4 things, the Hispanic population, which is the fastest growing population and the biggest driver of small businesses in the state, they look at those 4 policies and they go, you know what? The Republican policies of not taking more of my money, not over-regulating me, not over-litigating me, and having my children have a better opportunity for success because the public schools are more accountable, I'm going to become a Republican. I'm comfortable with what they're doing. So that, I think, is one of the reasons that you saw a 10-point difference from the governorship all the way down to the courts, the statewide courts. There was about a 10-point difference, 55-45 thereabouts. And I think the reason that's happening is because the Hispanic population in the state and some in the African-American community as well are coming over to the Republican side. And that's obviously not the only reasons, but policies matter. And as people look in the state of Texas, I'll speak to that. I think our policies are as good or better than any other state in the nation. You saw the same thing in Florida. And I think, again, this is Florida's governor, Florida's legislature, recognizing if you let people have more freedom, keep more of their money, don't overregulate, don't over litigate, have good public schools, that the people they'll reward you for that, and they'll reelect you. And that's what's happened in Texas.
And then I did want to ask you about Republicans regaining the majority, albeit a lot fewer votes than a lot of people predicted. What do you make of the fact that Republicans squeaked by in the House, didn't regain a majority in the Senate?
Well, I don't consider it to be a bad day. It wasn't as good as a lot of people had projected it to be, but the fact is, Nancy Pelosi is not going to be the speaker. Kevin McCarthy is, and that's a good thing. Whether yeah, you'd rather win the ball game 47-0, but it's still a W. I'm pretty sure the University of Texas, when they beat Oklahoma this last year, they were really excited that they won in a big way, but it's still a W. And that's what's important for the Republican Party in the House. It's still a W. We don't know yet in the Senate. The Senate may be the same place it was the last 2 years with a 50-50 Senate, depending on what happens in Georgia. And again, at that particular point in time, there's really been no change in the Senate. Joe Manchin, who from time to time can be a good conservative voice, he's going to play an important role, make sure that they don't get any real crazy leftist on the Supreme Court if there's an opening, for instance. So the Georgia runoff is really important from my perspective. But I think overall, it was a good night for the Republican Party. And when you can take over the House, even if it's by 5 or 6, that's basically where the Democrats were. And they seem to be able to get some things done that they wanted to get done. Kevin McCarthy, good, solid conservative. I'm very excited about what he's going to do over there. And then when you look at the 24 cycle, Jack, I think you see the map. That's really good for the Republican Party at that particular point in time. My projection is that people are going to be ready for some conservative, thoughtful, pro-business, pro-family, pro-faith leadership in America. And a Republican is going to be the president, and we're going to have both houses of the congressional bodies, the Senate and the House, in January 2025.
Former Texas governor and former U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Jack, always good to see you, my friend.